And please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Where are you from? Again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And thank you for joining today's webinar on Power Sector Decarbonization Action Plan Series. And we will have Brazil talk about the actions that they are taking. This webinar is brought to you by Clean Energy Solutions Center and 21st Century Power Partnership, two of the work streams of the Clean Energy Ministerial. So it's going to be an interesting webinar. So the agenda for today's webinar is we'll go through the speaker introduction, and then we'll do a quick overview about the two work streams of Clean Energy Ministerial, which are Clean Energy Solutions Center and 21st Century Power Partnership. And then we'll hear from our Brazilian colleagues on the actions that they are taking to decarbonize their power sector. So that's planning, building, and operating. And then we'll have question and answers later on. I'll hand it to Sophie to go through the housekeeping items. Sophie?
Thanks, Joel. Just really quickly, a few things to keep in mind throughout today's session. Firstly, this webinar is being recorded, and the reason for that is so that we can share the recording with attendees as well as those who registered but were unable to attend. The presentation will be shared alongside the recording. All participants will automatically be muted throughout today's session. However, you are highly encouraged to use the chat feature, which some of you are already doing. And also please use the Q&A function found at the toolbar at the bottom of your screen to ask questions, which will be addressed towards the end of the webinar. If you encounter any technical issues, please contact me, Sophie Schrader, via chat, and I will do my best to assist you. And your audio settings can be adjusted as well as adding closed captions, which you are encouraged to do. Lastly, at the end of today's session, a survey will launch, and we do review all of that feedback to ensure that future sessions are equally or even more valuable. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Renato.
Thanks, Sophie. Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. I am Renato Haddad. I work here in Brazil at Brazilian Energy Research Office, EPE. First of all, I'd like to thank and congratulations Clean Energy Solutions Center for the organization of this webinar, and to congratulation NREL in person of Joe Desai and Doug for the coordination of this initiative in the context of 21st CPP and Clean Energy Ministerial. For who don't know, Brazilian Energy Research Office, in Portuguese, EPE, we are part of the structure of Brazilian Ministry of Mines and Energy. We are responsible for doing technical studies that support the ministry decisions regarding energy planning the all energy sector in Brazil. And we were very happy to lead this action plan, the Brazilian action plan for rapid decarbonization here inside EPE by the leadership of the Ministry of Mines and Energy. Today, we have part of our team from EPE here represented. EPE have a multidisciplinary team, and today with me is here Gustavo Nassifi from Economic and Energy Studies Department. From Transmission Power System Department, we have here Marcos Farinha, Raquel Henriques from Biofuels and Petroleum Derivatives Department, and from Power Generation Department, we have me, Caio Leocádio, Gleison Miller, and Gustavo Ponte. We really hope all of you enjoy this webinar, and well, is it. Aaron, I guess you the screen.
Yeah, thanks Renato. I'm Aaron Ng with the U.S. Department of Energy, and I manage our Clean Energy Ministerial, or SEM, for short, and the engagements and programmatic efforts for the United States. But today, I'm serving as a co-lead of the Clean Energy Solutions Center and 21st Century Power Partnership, two work streams who are co-hosting this webinar. So for those of you who are not familiar with these work streams, it's my pleasure to introduce what these work streams do and how they can help advance our common goals. So on this slide, what's not mentioned is the Clean Energy Ministerial itself is a collaborative of 29 member countries working to rapidly increase the deployment of clean energy technologies globally. It consists of over 20 initiatives, two of which we're talking about today. The Clean Energy Solutions Center is one of those work streams and is led by the governments of Australia and the United States and operated by the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. The whole idea of the Clean Energy Solutions Center is to equip governments with the capacity to design and adopt policies and programs to deploy clean energy technologies. We do that in three ways. Next slide. The first is through our Ask an Expert service. This service is available to any government that needs additional capacity to support a clean energy question or policy issue, and it is available free of charge to developing countries. All you need to do is go to our website and apply to get that question answered. And in the history of the Clean Energy Solutions Center, we're proud to say that we've answered over 300 requests, supporting over 90 governments. Another way we support governments is through training and capacity building. Primarily, we've done over 300 webinars, reaching more than 20,000 public and private sector stakeholders. And our webinars are available on our site also as a resource for clean energy solutions around the world. Finally, our resource library not only includes our past webinars, but other reports, policy briefs, and journal articles, making up over 1,500 resources that help support the rapid deployment of clean energy technologies globally. Given that countries around the world are continuing to deploy clean energy technologies, I am glad we can share best practices and lessons learned from our Brazilian colleagues on today's webinar and further disseminate them through the Clean Energy Solutions Center. And if you find today's webinar helpful, I encourage you to leverage the resources mentioned today, like the Clean Energy Solutions Center's Ask an Expert service to answer your clean energy questions. Next slide. The Clean Energy Solutions Center, however, is not the only SEM initiative that supports countries on their pathways to decarbonizing their power systems. As we discussed or noted before, the 21st Century Power Partnership is another mechanism in SEM's toolbox to help its member and participating governments. Next slide. 21st Century Power Partnership, or CPP, or 21CPP for short, is a multi-country platform that fosters public-private collaboration to accelerate the transition to clean, efficient, secure, and reliable, and cost-effective power systems. Decarbonizing power systems cuts across various sectors, including transport, buildings, and industries, and requires coordination across interconnected systems from operations to transmission to market designs and workforce. 21CPP helps countries coordinate across these sectors and systems through advancing best practices in power system planning, building, and operations. We mainly do this through peer learning, knowledge sharing, and technical assistance. Next slide. On knowledge sharing, a key effort is our annual Thought Leadership Report, which covers various power system transformation topics and challenges across the world. Since 21CPP's inception, we've produced numerous reports on topics ranging from clean grids to market design. All our reports are publicly available on the 21CPP website, which you can access through the QR code on the screen. And I think there was a request on sharing the slides, and I think between NREL and the hosts here, I think we can certainly do that. But I'll let y'all confirm once I get through. But next slide. Building our knowledge sharing and incorporating technical assistance offerings, 21CPP further supports country level policy and regulatory implementation through the development of action plans. These action plans are country-led plans that lay out strategic actions for power sector decarbonization that are specific to a country's existing power sector goals and activities. To date, we've successfully supported 2 country cohorts in producing action plans for power sector decarbonization, and we're actively recruiting and also already supporting some for a 3rd cohort. So definitely reach out if you're interested. The first cohort of countries are shown on the screen, and they include the UK, India, Australia, Chile, and the European Commission. When you work with 21CPP to develop your action plans, you join a community within SEM and 21CPP to not only share best practices, but also learn what works and what doesn't as you seek to implement your power systems goals. Next slide. And today, as we noted, as you've seen from the advertisement, you'll hear from Brazil, a member of the 2nd cohort of countries, on its journeys and lessons in developing its own national action plan. But before I turn it over, I want to note again, we are currently recruiting these additional countries for our next cohort, and 21CPP co-leads would be happy to speak with any government interested in exploring a potential action plan. As we address the challenges of building out our power sector infrastructure to implement global goals and pledges, we hope to leverage initiatives like the Clean Energy Solution Center and 21CPP to disseminate timely knowledge from other work streams and provide short-term direct technical assistance to countries in need. With that, I thank you all for your time and turn it over to our main event, the Brazil Action Plan. Over to you, Renata.
Thanks, Aaron. Joe, can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, well, the next one, please. Let's start talking about a little bit about the Brazilian power system. Before we start talking about the actions, in fact, I'd like just to give all you some big numbers for Brazilian power system to contextualize what is our country and what are the challenges we expected to face in the future. As many of you know, Brazil is a continental size country, and I'd like to say that Brazil is a continental size renewable power system. As you can see here in this graph on the left side, we have today something around 250 gigawatts of installed capacity in our interconnected power system, in Brazil, interconnected power system, and we are majority renewable in this power system. Brazil have a predominance of hydropower plants in our generation mix, and hydro is the most important energy source that we have in our power sector. For the next 10 years, we expected to increase our power generation capacity in something around 40% to can supply the increasing of our economy in these next 10 years. And is expected to keep almost 90% of renewable source in this generation mix in the next 10 years. So it's not an easy task to keep this share of renewability in a power system, and also need to increase our economy, enhance the security of supply, and finally promote an inclusive and fair energy transition. Can you go to the next slide, please, Joe? To deal with this very big size, big continental size country, we need to have a very robust and reliable transmission power system. This transmission power system allow us to take the most advantage as we can from the different profiles of natural resource that we have spread all over the country. So we have wind in the northeast region of Brazil. We have hydro in the north region and in the south and southeast region of Brazil. We have solar in the higher part of the southeast and the northeast of Brazil. We have biomass in our power system. So we also need a very robust and reliable transmission system to interconnect all this region and allow us to take the most advantage we can of all these renewable sources that we have. The next one, please, Job. But all these pictures that I'm saying, that I'm telling you, I am talking about the interconnected system of the country. This interconnected system, it's responsible to supply something around 99% of all the energy consumption in Brazil. But in this other 1% or less than 1% of the energy consumption, we have off-grid systems that they are mainly located in the north region of Brazil, especially in the Amazon region. And the figure of the energy supply in this region is quite different from the figure that I just show you when we talk about interconnected system. The majority source that we have in these off-grid systems is oil diesel. We have something around 70% of the energy consumption in these off-grid systems from oil diesel. And when we talk about decarbonization of Brazilian power sector, I think that the most important action that we have is to decarbonize this off-grid system, to decarbonize the energy supply in the Amazon region of Brazil. Can you go next, please, Job? To deal with this challenge, we have in Brazil, we started the Amazon Energies Program, or in Portuguese, Energias da Amazônia program. It's a very, very important program to decarbonization that we have here. It's expected to need investments in something around $300 million in the next 10 years to promote the actions to promote the decarbonization of this region. And we have actions like integrated some of these regions to the interconnected systems to promote the variability of the source that we have there to promote more renewable source there to try to substitute the diesel consumption in this region. So this is the first action that I want to highlight here. I think it's the most important action when we talk about decarbonization of power sector in Brazil. Next one, please, Job. But it doesn't mean that we don't have challenge when we talk about the integrated power system. And from now on, my colleagues will describe some initiatives, some actions that we are doing, planning, building, and also operating to deal with the challenge that we have to keep the renewability of our power system in the next 10 years, enhancing the security of supply, and promoting a fair and inclusive transition in Brazil. To go further in this presentation, I pass the screen to Gustavo Nassif to talk a little bit about the National Energy Transition Policy. Gustavo, please.
Thank you very much, Renato. Good afternoon to all the audience. So we are going to start talking a little bit about the National Energy Transition Policy. That was the creation of this policy was debated in the National Energy Policy Council, and for the ones that are not Brazilian, the National Energy Policy Council is chaired by the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and it comprises 17 state ministers and serves as an advisory board to the President of the Republic for the formulation of the energy policies and guidelines. So it was proposed the creation of this policy in December 23, and from January to July 2024, there was a series of rounds of discussions with the members of the CNPE and with the National Office for the Social Participation of the General Office of the Presidents. This is mainly because of the intention to increase the participation of social participation in the process. And finally, in August, last August, we have the approval of the resolution establishing the National Energy Transition Policy, and its two instruments: the National Energy Transition Plan, that we call PLANTE, and the National Energy Transition Forum, that we call FONTE in Portuguese. And I will discuss a little bit the objective of the National Energy Transition Policies, as we can see here. The first one is to clearly articulate Brazil's ambitions for the energy transitions and to somehow guide the country efforts in pursuing the net zero in the long term. The National Energy Transition Policy also aims to support the alignment of the energy policy with other public policies, and that's why it was proposed using the governance of the National Policy Council, Energy Policy Council. It has also the aim of increase and attract investments in the energy transition supply chains, generating more jobs and more income from this supply from these energy transition supply chains. It aims to establish a foundation for dialogue with society and greater social participation, and also aims to promote opportunities for Brazil's economic and geopolitical integration. So, and how are we going to pursue this objective? It's using the two instruments that it's coming in the next slide. Please, Joe. The first one is the National Energy Transition Forum. There is a permanent and consultative instrument that aims to stimulate, expand, and democratize discussions on energy transition between the federal government, the civil society, the productive sector, and subnational entities. So it is expected to have a lot of meetings, events, consultations, and then it will have a plenary where it will have quarterly meetings, and the work developed on that forum will lead to an annual recommendation letter to the National Energy Policy Council and to the National Energy Transition Plan also. That is plenty. That is the next instrument that I'm going to show you quickly. So Plenty is the National Energy Transition Plan. It is a long-term action plan that will align the energy transition scenarios with and supporting economic and social development needs, and aims, of course, for net zero greenhouse gas emissions in Brazil. It has two different approaches it will have two different approaches on Plenty. The first one is sectoral approach, covering actions in the main energy transition points. So, for example, the energy transition, energy in industry, energy in transportation, the decarbonization of oil and gas industry, electric power sector, and mining sector also. But it will have also another approach that is the cross-cutting approach, that it is expected to address aspects such legal, regulatory framework, investments and finance, and the social dimension of these actions. And it will be covering aspects like legal regulatory agenda, promotion of investments, energy inclusion, supply security, and others. And I think that is the points that I bring here. So I pass the floor to Farinha that will go on the transmission side. Farinha, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Gustavo. Hello, everyone. So I'll keep going, talking a little bit about the transmission planning process in Brazil. And it's really interesting to start this part of the planning process talking about the transmission expansion, because it's probably one of the trending topics when we think about energy transition process. The transmission expansion is certainly decisive to allow a safe integration of renewables and to allow a safe operation of the system. So when we think about the Brazilian, how we are dealing with the integration of renewables and the process of transmission planning, we need to talk about the proactive transmission planning and what we have been doing in the recent years. So as a summary, we started planning the transmission system in advance. That's what we call proactive planning. So we are using different strategies to deal with the challenge of integrating especially wind and solar photovoltaics to the grid. And most of the challenges, they are related to those pictures you can see here in these slides. Well, the first one is the location of all these projects. They are scattered over a very large area of the country. And also they are really projects that can be built in a very short time. When we compare the time needed to expand the transmission system, it takes much longer. In Brazil, about 7 years. And to deal with the uncertainties of time and location, what we have done is to map all these projects all over the country and use some clusterization methodologies based on the k-means methods in order to find what are the hotspots of these new projects and where we should focus our expansion of the transmission grid, to which locations we should do. So when we started doing this about 2021, we had more than 70 gigawatt of projects, different projects in the country. So it was a huge challenge, try to find the best way to expand the transmission system in a way that it would be necessary to the country in order to cope the generation expansion and the demand expansion. So please, the next slide. And by doing these proactive transmission planning, what is important to say, we have a very large country, as Renato has mentioned in the beginning of this presentation. But when we think about large, what are we talking about? We're talking about more than 2,000 kilometers east-west, and more than that when we think about north-south directions. And when we started doing this proactive transmission planning, we came to the conclusion that we need to expand more than 15,000 kilometers of new transmission lines, only considering the 500 kV and 230 kV lines. We also needed to include some controllability to the system by adding an HVDC link, 800 kV high voltage link to the system, more than 5 gigawatt in over a distance of 1,500 kilometers, connecting the producer regions to the consumer regions. And the investments that were needed as a result of the recommendation of these studies, they surpassed more than 10 billion US dollars of investments, which were really necessary to allow a safe integration of these generation projects and also to be able to deliver this generation to the load centers, the main load centers that are located in the southeast region. And when these assets become operational, we will not only allow the safe integration of all, most of the generation that we have envisioned to the north and northeast regions of Brazil, but we have also increased our capacity and resilience to cope with the different future needs, increasing resilience, reliability of the transmission system. So could please next slide. I'll hand over to my friend Rachel.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much, Farinha. I'm very proud to be the female representative from EP in this panel. And concerning the decarbonization of the power sector, it's important to highlight the participation of bioenergy. Brazil has abundant renewable sources, and bioenergy is part of its matrix since the beginning. As already shown, the total energy supply has almost 50% of renewable sources. Considering power generation, which has more than 80% of renewable, bioelectricity represents circa 8% of electricity matrix. In this matrix, the main participation is sugarcane bagasse, followed by black liquor from the paper industry. The graphic on the left side shows all the power generation for the last 3 years. Along the time presented, it's very clear how bioelectricity complements hydropower. Sugarcane bioelectricity has its higher contribution during the dry season, so it helps to keep our hydrothermal matrix renewability, even when the reduction of hydro participation. Even more, the majority of its production is close to the biggest metropolitan consumption in Brazil, in São Paulo, what reduces the loss in energy transmission system. That's just Farinha said is one of our greatest challengers. On the right side, it's shown the development of the legal framework to foster the production and use of biogas. This renewable source is increasing its participation in the energy matrix in the last year. The main raw material used to energy generation is municipal solid waste for large-scale plants, but the great amount of biogas plants is from agriculture waste. As it can be generated from a large range of sources, this production can be spread all over the country. I'd like to pinpoint the potential for the residual sugarcane from the sugarcane industry, which has as benefit of facilitating logistics and infrastructure. The vinasse and the filter cake from the ethanol and sugar production can be sources for large-scale and concentrated production of biogas and after purification, biomethane. According to the law of fuels of the future sanctioned by President Lula in October this year, biomethane has a mandatory participation in the near future and can share the same pipeline of natural gas. The next slide, please. So, also important possibility to decarbonization of the power sector is the use of biofuels in thermal powers. Jumping to biodiesel, soy oil and beef tallow are responsible for 8% of the raw material for its production in Brazil. Important to call attention to soy oil, 70% of the source used shown in the graphic, in orange in the graphic. If needed, the actual exploitation of this material can be directed to it. Besides that, Brazil is the biggest soybean producer and exporter, and in 2023, we exported 100 million tons. As in the bullets, using the idle capacity to soy smash, it's possible to meet 53% of the maximum demand of the Northeast thermal power exclusively with the biodiesel. It's important to underscore that regional feedstock are under study and included in public policy to enhance biodiesel production. The objective of social biofuels seal are pillar values of President Lula da Silva government, and these regional raw materials can drive this and the strengthening and sustainable development to family farming and its organization as contribution to productive diversification, the reduction of inequalities, the mitigation of climate impacts, and the promotion of energy and food security. In the long term, it could catalyze job creation and income distribution to rural areas in Brazil with regional development. These were the final consensus guidelines concluded under the Brazil G20 presidency, what includes poverty reduction and just energy transition. Thank you. I think now Caio Leocádio is on the floor.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Now let's talk about Brazil's most recent improvements on electricity market design, capacity supply, flexibility, resilience, and technological innovation. So our energy market has historically based on firm energy provided by hydropower, which was sufficient to meet all system requirements for a long time. However, with the integration of variable renewable resources like wind and solar, Brazil's system now also requires capacity complementation to meet peak demand. And for this reason, capacity auctions have been held since 2021 to ensure future supply security. So in the coming years, as variable renewables grow their share in Brazilian electricity matrix, we will need to modernize our legal and regulatory frameworks. This will include enhancing operational flexibility and incorporating advanced technologies. Okay, please, next slide, please. Now let's begin by discussing one of essential tools for this transition, evolutions on computational models. To manage the variability of renewable source, improving computational models is fundamental. These tools now require more temporal and spatial detail to capture resource behavior and its correlation with demand. Furthermore, forecasting energy ramp-ups in these models, even in long-term studies, has become essential. So the evolution of these tools enables more precise and efficient operation of power system, helping integrate renewables without compromising reliability. Speaking of ramps and variability, now we're gonna address the assessment of system flexibility. Please, next slide. Flexibility is the system's ability to quickly respond to supply and demand variations. With increasing of renewable sources, intraday variations in early net load have intensified. Everyone here knows the famous duck curve, but here in Brazil, with the specific characteristics of our electrical matrix, our curve is a little different, and we call it 2UU curve, using as a reference a typical Brazilian bird with your long neck, as you see in this chart. And talking about these ramps, we already face ramps of around 10,000 megawatt per hour, will become greater in the coming years. So in long-term planning, it will be critical to monitor not only average energy and capacity, but also this variation, ensuring the system has adequate resource to meet these needs. Now, let's explore the resource that provide this flexibility. Please, next one. Brazil has a strategic advantage in terms of flexibility, thanks to our hydropower plants, which offer fast ramps and with low operational costs. When we look at generation history, hydropower plants have already delivered ramps of up to 9,000 megawatts per hour. But this number hasn't reached its full potential. That could be around 35,000 megawatts per hour. But we know that operational restrictions, such as minimal water flow and outdated models, limited their full potential assessment, and it's a great challenge to deal. Thermal plants can also provide flexibility, but current energy-only contracts impose unit commitment constraints, limiting their flexible output. For another hand, technologies such as biomass, batteries, demand response, and pumped storage hold great potential to contribute to flexibility. Unlocking this potential will require regulatory improvements and incentives for developing this technology. Next one, please. Oh, please. Another one. Thank you. Thank you. Let's now consider how we can enhance the flexibility of existing assets. We think that before investing in new solutions, improving the flexibility of existing plants is a cost-effective strategy. For example, adjustments to generator remuneration structures and better price signals can encourage greater adaptability. And at the same time, mapping operational challenges and defining flexibility metrics are crucial for optimizing these assets. So these initiatives require significant efforts, but can profoundly transform our capacity to address changes in the electricity sector. Next one, please. We'll focus now on the role of the hydropower plants with reservoir in this context. Hydropower plants with reservoirs play a crucial role in balancing variability from renewables. Managing this resource efficiently requires addressing challenges such as hydraulical restrictions and competing water uses. Governance structures are also important for coordinating actions among multiple reservoir users, such as those outlined in the Reservoir Recovery Plan conducted by Ministry of Mines and Energy. So for hydropower to fully collaborate with other resources in providing flexibility, it requires adapting plant operations to respond quickly to system changes. This demands integration between planning and operation, aligning advanced technological tools with strategies to optimize plant operation for increased capacity and flexibility, while preserving reservoirs to better provide this service. Speaking of change, it's also crucial to address the impact of climate change on our power system. And we'll see in the next slide, please. Climate change has posed critical challenges on the electricity sector. In 2023, for example, water scarcity in the North region reduced generation at Santo Antonio hydropower plant, impacting energy supply and transmission network in this region. In response, Brazil has launched initiatives like Roadmap for Strengthening Power Sector Resilience and the Action Plan to address water scarcity in radial system to mitigate these risks. These efforts highlight the importance of proactive planning and adaptation to ensure system reliability in the face of climate change challenges. So with the growing need for flexible technology that promotes resilience, it's important to look at new technologies like small modular reactors that we'll see in the next slide, please. This new technology offers great opportunities for Brazil's decarbonization goals. With shorter construction timelines, reduced costs, and greater safety, SMRs could provide both flexibility and resilience, especially in off-grid systems and regions with difficult access. But we know that are technological and economical challenges that must be addressed to realize their full potential. Collaborations like those with the US Department of Energy and are helping Brazil evaluate SMR integration into energy planning for 2050. These initiatives could position SMR as an important technology of our energy future. Now I'll give the floor to Gustavo Ponte. Please, Gustavo. Thank you.
Thank you, Caio. So now moving to distributed generation. It's growing at a very swift pace in Brazil and faster than any other technology, especially when it comes to solar PV. So in the bottom left graph, you can see that almost 10% of electricity came from distributed generation last year. And in the future, we expect that it will continue to grow as we can have up to 70 gigawatts by 2034, depending on the scenario. So next slide, please. But we have some challenges ahead, just to mention three of them. The first is to better quantify the costs and benefits of distributed generation. Secondly, we need some updates in the market design to harmonize distributed generation with the conventional electricity market. And lastly, we need more inclusive policies to broaden access to solar energy. Next, please. And talking about other new technologies, we have selected three of the most relevant, maybe, starting with offshore wind. There is a legal framework to be approved in the Congress, and a lot of developers are pushing for regulation, and they are submitting their projects. And all these projects, they sums up more than 200 gigawatts so far. And there are some challenges ahead again, like overlaps between those projects and also the competitiveness, because offshore wind is still an expensive source when compared to other technologies in Brazil. But at the same time, we have a great potential if we consider only shallow waters and areas with greater wind speed. We are talking about almost 700 gigawatts of potential. Secondly, another new technology, we can talk about storage, and we focus on pumped hydro storage and batteries. So regarding pumped hydro storage, we have a lot of experience in Brazil in building hydropower plants, so it's not so different. And in recent years, we have published here in EPE several studies, including a methodology for site selection, and we are about to release a roadmap for pumped hydro storage. And the same goes for batteries, because we have studies regarding utility scale batteries and also distributed or behind the meter batteries. So this is a technology that can provide flexibility and capacity, and that is what our power system needs in the coming years, like Caio said before. And we are also considering batteries as transmission assets and also as part of the solution for the off-grid systems in the Amazon region, mentioned by Renato in the beginning of the presentation, because batteries can support the integration of solar PV, reducing fossil fuel consumption and also reducing costs to consumers. And when it comes to hydrogen, everybody's talking about it. In Brazil is no different. We have our policy in place, the National Hydrogen Program, and two laws recently approved by Congress. our approach in Brazil is to have technological neutrality. So we are not looking only to green hydrogen, but to any solution that can reduce emissions. That's why we have several studies talking about green, blue, gray, turquoise, and also the use on refineries. All the links to the studies are here on the presentation. And like in offshore wind, the potential is not a problem. The numbers are huge. And as a result of the market development, we now have more than 30 gigawatts in projects asking for a connection to the grid. So it's getting more and more important. So next slide, please. And now talking about investments in research, development, and innovation in the energy sector, both in the oil and gas sector and in the power sector as well. Because in these two sectors, every company must invest a small share of its revenue in RD&I studies. And as a result, we had almost $1 billion per year in this kind of investments recently. All these data are monitored by EPE through the Innova E platform. The link is here on the presentation as well, and I invite you to take a look. In 2021, also, the National Energy Policy Council, they set some guidelines with priority themes to invest by those companies in the sector, including hydrogen, storage, biofuels, and so on. Next, please. And the next slide, you can see the growth of investments in research and development on hydrogen, including from oil and gas companies, because there is some cross-sector expertise here. And under our national hydrogen program, we have set a goal to increase these investments by 7 times by 2025. And the good news is we have already achieved that goal. So again, all this data comes from Innova platform, which is a good example of how we use information to support decision-making in the energy policy. Thank you, and I hand over to my colleague, Gleison.
Thank you, Gustavo. Good afternoon. Today, I would like to share with you some key milestones about increased consumer participation in power system in Brazil. First, I will talk about demand response. Let's start with 2018. This was a pivotal year for demand response in Brazil. Despite its innovative approach, the pilot faced some challenges in achieving significant consumer participation. However, it marked a crucial step forward in creating a foundation for demand response initiatives. Fast forward to 2021, during a critical period of water scarcity in Brazil, a voluntary demand reduction program was launched, targeting industrial consumers. The results were remarkable. Let's go to 2024, a landmark year for demand response in Brazil. The first ever specific auction for demand response has just taken place, and the results are great. Almost 100 megawatts have been contracted. This achievement represents a significant step in the evolution of demand response in our country. Next slide, please. Okay, now let's talk about energy efficiency. As part of our discussion on energy efficiency in Brazil, I would like to highlight one of our most successful programs, the Procel Seal of Energy Efficiency. The Procel Seal is a certification program designed to encourage energy savings uses. Since 1986, the program has reached a cumulative energy savings of 214 billion kilowatt hours. And now let's go to stakeholders with Renato.
Thanks, Gleison. Thanks for all my colleagues from EPE. And well, all you know, all you can see as we just presented that we have several challenges to deal with the change that we need to promote in Brazilian power system in the next years to keep with a renewable power system, enhancing the security of supply and promoting a fair and inclusive energy transition. The good news is that all these challenges are already mapped, and this action plan is a very important instrument to help us to structure all these initiatives, all these actions, to monitor if these goals are being achieved or not, and to adjust the actions whenever we need. In Brazil, we have an important culture of public consultation that incentivize all the society and all the stakeholders to participate, to discuss, to criticize these initiatives, the government's decisions, and etc. And I think that's an important instrument as this action plan helps this society participation inside the process. So this initiative, public consultations, this action plan, they are very, very important to engage all the stakeholders and make them part of all this process. Also, in Brazil, the energy sector have a very solid governance, and where each institution have the specific role very well described with the leadership of Brazilian Ministry of Mines and Energy, and it helps to the society to participate because they know which is the role of each institution in our energy sector. Can you go ahead, please, John? And well, this is a Brazilian action plan for rapid decarbonization. As I already mentioned, I'm sure that it's a very, very important instrument to help us to deal with all these challenges. And again, I'd like to thank and congratulate NREL, congratulate you, Jodisai, for the coordination of this initiative in the context of 21st CPP and Clean Energy Ministerial. And when we were working on this action plan, we realized that this is a very, very important instrument. And well, we are here. I think we have maybe a few minutes to discuss a little bit to answer any question if people has. So, Joe, I give you back the screen.
Yes, and thank you so much, all the speakers. It was such an insightful presentation, and it's very inspiring to learn and know what Brazil is doing in planning, building, and operating side of decarbonizing the power systems. So looks like we have 6 minutes. So let's go through some of the questions that we have in the chat. So let's start with the first one. So again, you all talked about the solar energy as source for energy for solution and generation. Are you also looking at sources as bioenergy or hydraulic energy?
I think I
Go
can
ahead.
start answer this, Joe, and if any colleagues wants to complement, please feel free, people. Well, the first point, I think that maybe this question is the first one. The person who asked it right in the very beginning of the presentation, because as you could see here, we have a very, very diversified potential of renewable source. We're talking about bioenergy, hydro, solar, wind, offshore wind, nuclear, consumers participation. So we talking about, we are paying attention in a very diversified spread of technology here in Brazil.
Yeah. Anyone else would like to chime in? If not, we can go to the next question. So let's go to the next one. So we talk about the stakeholder engagement, right? So again, given the importance for building the capacity of women in the energy space, what are those specific opportunities are available for engaging women in this space as it relates to the energy transition plan? If you can share specific opportunities with our audience.
Rachel,
Thank you very much for that question. I think it's a very important point, and I think we are, well, as myself, I can say in EP, we try to give opportunities to every woman that take part of the team. But I think worldwide speaking, we have very solid challenges to face. We still have women in power positions, but we still are very, very low. I think we have to do an effort, recognize every woman that is doing an excellent job and trying to find a space in the energy sector. Not only in the energy sector, actually in all the sectors. I think we are creating a very good potential for a space, but I think we shall be conscious and try to give opportunities, because here in Brazil, we have a lack of opportunity that I think it can say worldwide, or even in Europe or United States, that are major countries that are considered to be more accurate or more, can I say, updated to the women's rights. I think we have lots of things to do, but I thank you very much for the question and the opportunity to say that it's not a women position, it's a world position. It's not only for women, but all for men. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rachel. Anyone else? Okay, so then let's go to the next question. So again, this question is from Gustavo Ponte. Nassif, Gustavo. How Brazilian government will support the process with this new agenda of increasing the taxes to import products, especially the PV one?
So I can start here. So thank you for the question. I think you are referring to the recently announced rise of importation taxes on solar panels. It's something more related to fiscal terms, and the energy policy is one part of this complex issue. On one hand, it can have an impact on the competitiveness of power generation, but on the other hand, most renewables have gone through a significant cost decline and are very competitive in Brazil. And many studies suggest that this is a trend that should continue. So it might balance. So Nassif, any additional comments?
Yeah, I think, and we have also to have in mind that there are other government incentives to solar. For example, we have recently announced the RAGE, that is tax benefit for distributed generation projects. And for example, Minha Casa Minha Vida, that is a government program, it is kind of installing a lot of solar in the Amazon region. So there is a lot of incentives from the government side to the solar energy here in Brazil too. But it is the challenge of integrating policies at the end of the day, yes.
Yeah, keeping a check on the time, we'll take one more question. So how is Brazil thinking about the cross-border collaboration as it relates to decarbonization goals and for wider impact?
Well, I think to interconnect it with our neighbors here in Brazil, it's an important topic. We discuss these kind of topics here in Brazil. It's not in a specific part of this action plan, but on the next national energy plan that we expected to launch next year, this topic will be appears there. We have a specific discussion in this because this is more a long-term discussion here, because we need to do some negotiations with these other countries, create the market design for this, prepare some specific rules, sometimes laws and some things like that. Negotiations between countries is not so easy to do, but it's part of our job here in EPE and Ministry of Mines and Energy to pay attention in this, to look to this potential, especially the hydro potential that we have in our neighbors here in Latin America. So we are paying attention to that. And when National Energy Plan be launched, we invited everyone to discuss this.
Definitely, and would be again. We can have another session to talk about the transition plan. And right on time. Again, I would like to thank all of the speakers and thank you for sharing the actions that the Brazil is taking to decarbonize. And for folks, we will make sure we'll share the recording and the presentation. And again, thank you so much for joining today's webinar. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you
very
very
much.
much.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye.